Before the politics, before the speeches, and long before the history books, every president had to eat. And not just state dinners and silver spoons, honey. I'm talking about real food. Comfort food. Favorite food. The kind you ask for on your birthday or when the world feels too heavy. From squirrel stew to Big Macs, we're about to take a delicious ride through every U.S. president's favorite dish. Not just what they ate, but why it mattered. Because when the cameras are off and the ties come loose, even the most powerful man in the world just wants something hot, familiar, and dripping with memory. And isn't that just like us? There's something timeless about the American table, the way a roast smells in the oven or the quiet clink of forks on Sunday supper. In the White House or your grandma's kitchen, food tells a story no speech ever could. And today, we're telling 50 of them. So stay close, one bite at a time. We're tasting the heart of the presidency. Let's dish. There's something sacred about the American dinner table. Maybe it's the way the mashed potatoes steam beside the meatloaf, or how the gravy boat always seems to find its way back to Dad. But if there's one thing that ties every household and every White House together, it's food. Now, I know what you're thinking, presidents and their fancy state dinners, right? But darling, behind every gold-plated fork and fine china setting is a hungry man who just wants his favorite dish the way Mama used to make it. From George Washington's hickory nuts to Bill Clinton's Big Macs, our commanders-in-chief have had some mighty down-to-earth cravings, and sometimes, bless their hearts, a few downright peculiar ones. It's funny, really. You can learn a lot about a man by what he eats when no one's looking. A bowl of cottage cheese can speak volumes. A peanut butter sandwich might just shape foreign policy. And when the cameras are off and the crowds have gone, it's usually comfort food that comes calling, often straight from childhood, always straight from the heart. So let's take a walk through history, not through dusty textbooks or marble statues, but through the pantries and pie safes of the Oval Office. One president at a time, one plate at a time. Because while policies change and parties swap places, the scent of fried chicken or apple pie, that never goes out of style. George Washington. I like to imagine him in that early American kitchen, a crackling hearth, the smell of hickory logs, and the plate of roasted hickory nuts ready by his elbow. He wasn't eating elaborate fare. He went straight for the woodsy flavors of his Virginia heritage. Number 2, John Adams. Mr. Adams had a sweet tooth, sugar. He loved his walnut cake, a dense honeyed treat, like something founding Mother Abigail might have baked for his afternoon tea. I can almost smell the molasses, can't you? Number 3, Thomas Jefferson. Now Jefferson, that worldly fellow, adored macaroni and cheese, even importing a pasta machine just for it. He called it a memorable bowl of macaroni. Picture that elegant table setting in Monticello and this creamy dish stealing the show. Number 4, James Madison. A genteel fellow. Madison had a thing for fresh fruit preserves, especially peach marmalade. I imagine tiny silver spoons, spreading sweet peach on rolls as he chats with Dolly in the garden. Number 5, James Monroe. Ah, Monroe. That Virginian loved his sweet potatoes, plain, mashed, or baked into pies, an earthy staple, reminiscent of farm to table before it was cool. Number 6, John Quincy Adams. Now, darling, here's where it gets interesting. He liked a morning snacker, clear soup of tapioca. A cozy cup to start the day, he said, simple, warm, and a little unusual. Number 7, Andrew Jackson. Old Hickory liked his food simple and southern, and nothing said Jackson like corn pone. Just cornmeal, water, and a bit of salt, baked up crisp on the hearth. Rugged, no frills, just like the man himself. 8. Martin Van Buren. The little magician had Dutch roots, and he never forgot 'em. His favorite? Boerenkool, a warm Dutch stew of mashed potatoes and kale, usually served with sausage. A bowl of it probably reminded him of home in Kinderhook. 9. William Henry Harrison. Bless his heart. He wasn't president long enough to unpack his apron. But during his short time, he was said to enjoy squirrel stew, a frontier favorite. Not glamorous, but certainly hearty. 10. John Tyler. Tyler had a fondness for Virginia ham. honey glazed and slow smoked. Picture it on a carved platter at a White House supper, the scent of clove and brown sugar in the air. 11. James K. Polk. President Polk worked hard and dined light. He was said to prefer cornbread and buttermilk, a no-nonsense pairing for a no-nonsense man. 12. Zachary Taylor. General Taylor had a fondness for challahs, sweet rice fritters, fried up golden and dusted with sugar. A Creole treat that hinted at his Louisiana ties. 13. Millard Fillmore. Fillmore had an eye for the refined, and he loved turtle soup, a delicacy of the time, served in elegant tureens at White House dinners. 14. Franklin Pierce. This New England gent loved fried clams, crispy, golden, and served up on a paper plate. He was ahead of his time in that way, a seaside staple before it became a drive-in favorite. 15. James Buchanan. Our only bachelor president kept it cozy with cabbage slaw and fresh buttered bread. And honey, he could eat entire loaves in one sitting. Abraham Lincoln. Now here's a sweet one. Honest Abe had a soft spot for apples. Fresh, baked, stewed, but especially apple pie. He'd skip fancy dishes for a plain slice with a tall glass of milk. 17. Andrew Johnson. He may not have had formal schooling, but Johnson had a textbook love for homestyle fare, especially Hoppin' John, a humble mix of black-eyed peas and rice. Southern comfort at its most sincere. 18. Ulysses S. Grant. The general loved beef, plain, roasted, and tender. But his top request at the White House? Rice pudding. Simple, creamy, and probably a nostalgic note from his boyhood. 19. Rutherford B. Hayes. Hayes was all about breakfast, and he adored cornmeal mush with a pat of butter melting slow. Warm, golden, and served with maple syrup if it was a special day. 20. James A. Garfield. A true Ohioan, Garfield went wild for squirrel stew and fresh milk. He liked it hearty and honest, not unlike his short-lived presidency. 21. Chester A. Arthur. Now Arthur, he was a fancy fella. He adored mutton chops. Not just the facial hair, honey, but the actual dish. Rich, tender, and dressed up for a White House dinner. 22. Grover Cleveland. Big Grover had a big appetite, and he was wild for corned beef and cabbage. It wasn't just a St. Patty's Day dish for him. That briny, slow-simmered goodness, pure comfort on a plate. 23. Benjamin Harrison. President Harrison was known to enjoy wild game, but his favorite treat? Corn in nearly every form, creamed, boiled, or baked into pudding. Just imagine a stovetop pot bubbling over with sweet creamed corn. 24. William McKinley. Now McKinley was all about meat and potatoes, but he had a particular soft spot for hot lobster salad, a rich, creamy affair topped with a sprinkle of paprika. You just know it came out of the kitchen piping hot. 25. Theodore Roosevelt. Rough Rider Teddy needed hearty fuel, and coffee and steak were his go-to combo. He liked his meat gamey and his coffee strong enough to wake a moose. 26. William Howard Taft. President Taft? He loved roast possum with sweet potatoes, and yes, it was served at his victory dinner. Strange to us now, but in 1909 it was the ultimate Southern delicacy. 27. Woodrow Wilson. Wilson kept things light, especially later in his presidency. His top request was chicken salad, served cold with crisp lettuce and a dollop of mayo. Dainty but dependable. 28. Warren G. Harding. Oh, Harding loved pie. Any kind, really, but buttermilk pie was his top slice. Sweet, custardy, and best served with a whisper of nutmeg. Word is, he had a slice with lunch nearly every day. 29. Calvin Coolidge. Silent Cal was quiet at the table too, but he was known to snack on apples, crisp and fresh, just like Lincoln. But when he indulged, it was Vermont-style pancakes, slathered in maple syrup. Number 30s. Herbert Hoover. Now, Hoover caught some flack for his timing, but the man sure loved sweet potatoes with marshmallows, even during lean times. It was a luxury, yes, but a taste of holidays past. Number 31, Franklin D. Roosevelt. FDR brought elegance back to the table. He adored hot dogs, yes, hot dogs, especially during that famous picnic with the King of England. Served on a bun with mustard right on the lawn. Number 32, Harry S. Truman. Midwestern through and through, Truman's go-to meal was fried chicken with milk gravy. He liked his food plain and hearty, just like Bess made it back home in Independence. Number 33, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Ike was a meat and potatoes man, but his true favorite? Beef stew. He even liked to cook it himself, slow-simmered, rich with carrots and pearl onions. The smell must have filled the White House kitchen like Sunday supper at Grandma's. Number 34, John F. Kennedy. Oh, Jack, he had a refined palate, but his heart stayed in New England. Clam chowder was his favorite, creamy and briny, served hot with oyster crackers. You can almost hear the clink of spoons and the Boston Harbor breeze. Number 35, Lyndon B. Johnson. LBJ brought Texas to D.C., and nothing said Texas like chili. Without beans, of course. He liked it fiery, thick, and ladled into big bowls for family and friends on his ranch. 36. Richard Nixon. Now, Nixon was a curious case. He loved cottage cheese, especially with ketchup on top. Yes, you heard right. Cold, tangy, and very presidential in its own odd way. 37. Gerald Ford. Ford adored pot roast, fork tender and drenched in gravy. Served with boiled potatoes and green beans, it was a church potluck classic, just like you'd see on a Tupperware table in Grand Rapids. 38. Jimmy Carter. Well, of course, it's peanuts. Roasted, boiled, spread on toast, our Georgia boy couldn't get enough. And during his presidency, peanut-themed gifts flooded the White House like a planter's parade. 39. Ronald Reagan. Now, Reagan had a sweet tooth the size of California. His favorite? Jelly beans, especially licorice. He kept jars of them on Air Force One and even used them to woo foreign leaders. 40. George H.W. Bush. You'd better not serve him broccoli, honey. He banned it from Air Force One. But what he did love was pork rinds, especially with Tabasco. Crunchy, spicy, and perfect for campaign trail snacking. 41. Bill Clinton. Now Bill, he loved fast food. Big Macs, fried chicken, and barbecue were always on the menu. But if he had to pick a favorite, it was cheeseburgers, hot, greasy, and handed through a drive-thru window. 42. George W. Bush. Dubia had a Texan's taste, and he never strayed far from cheeseburgers and BLTs. But his top pick? A good old grilled cheese sandwich with white bread and American cheese. Comfort food with a cowboy heart. 43. Barack Obama. Now, President Obama was smooth as a good espresso, but when it came to food, he was all about chili. His own recipe, too. Ground turkey, kidney beans, and spice. He cooked it on the campaign trail, and it never left the rotation. 44. Donald Trump. Trump was all about fast food, like officially, McDonald's, KFC, and especially Filet-O-Fish sandwiches. He loved the consistency, the crispiness, and the quick delivery. 45. Joe Biden. And good old Joe, he's a straight-up ice cream man, chocolate chip to be exact. Cones, cups, waffle bowls. If there's a scoop nearby, Biden's got one. Isn't it funny, darling, how history never really leaves the dinner table? From Washington's roasted nuts to Biden's chocolate chip cones, these dishes aren't just presidential trivia. They're portraits of a nation, one plate at a time. A ladle of stew during war, a slice of pie in the Great Depression, a burger on the campaign trail. These aren't just meals, they're moments, they're memories. And maybe that's why we care so much. Because food isn't just what we eat, it's how we remember. Our grandmother's peach preserves, our dad's Sunday chili, our own messy childhood peanut butter sandwiches. It's how we connect, just like presidents do, whether they're serving possum, pancakes, or plain white rice. So next time you pull out a frozen pot pie or sneak a bite of jelly beans from the pantry, just think, somewhere, sometime, a president probably did the same thing. And maybe, just maybe, we're all a little more presidential than we think. Now tell me, sugar, what would your White House meal be? And if you liked this cozy walk through America's tastiest tales, give us a like, a comment, and a good old subscribe. We've got plenty more kitchen stories cooking. Want me to write another? Just give me the next title, sweetie.